Alrighty, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Academic Connect today. As we're coming in, just want to welcome you. Thank you for joining us for another one of our virtual events. And so my name is Thomas. I am one of our admissions counselors here at Azusa Pacific University. And you have found yourself at the Academic Connect for Communications Management, Journalism, and Design Studies. And so once again, welcome. We're glad to see you. And so I think a couple introductions are in order. So I'll go ahead and introduce to you some of our lovely panelists who are with us. So first we have Dr. Leland. Doctor, if you want to maybe give a little wave over there, there he is. He oversees our Communication Studies department. He's been here at APU with us for the past 4 years, and he teaches in our Communication Management program, which he'll get to share with you about in just a little bit. We also have Professor Walls with us down right below him. He teaches in our journalism school, and he oversees our Zoo Media. And so if you are looking to go into broadcast journalism or really get into the modern world and kind of see what journalism is all about these days, Professor Walls is your guy. He knows all the ins and outs of what that looks like. And so he'll get to share a little bit about that in just a moment. And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Rowe with us. She is the program director of design here at APU. She's been with us faithfully for the past 20 years. And she even helped us develop our original design program. And what's cool about that is that because she's been here so long with us, she's actually seeing new upgraded curriculum for the 21st century be introduced in the program. So just like the others, she knows the ins and outs of everything about the program. And so we're going to get to hear and even see a little bit of what that looks like for design studies. So before we go ahead and get started, a little housekeeping just to get out of the way. And so we are going to be having a question and answer session at the second half of this presentation. And so if you look on the bottom of your screen, there'll be a little Q&A tab. Go ahead and put any questions that you have for any of our lovely panelists today in that question and answer box, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end. If you have a general question about admissions or just things about APU, my friends Andrew and Emily are actually in the back right now, and so they'll be able to get back to your questions via chat as well. So yeah, any questions you have, please feel free to drop those, and we will either answer those at the end of this call or via chat. All right, with all of that out of the way, Doc, I think I'm going to hand off the evening to you to begin our presentation tonight. Oh, I think you're muted, Doc.
Sorry about that. So, you know, old dogs, new tricks, and this kind of thing. I actually, Thomas was a student of mine. So if you want the inside track on, you know, classes, you can, you know, get the inside track. Hopefully he'll say good things. But welcome to this evening. I'm excited you're here. I'm excited you're looking in at our departments. I have the opportunity to head up both departments and have had a great time getting to know more about all of these areas. My area of study is really in the communication management, communication studies area. I've been a speechwriter for the National Governors Association and a number of different political campaigns over the years. And so I enjoy election season. I normally enjoy election season. When it gets kind of nasty, you're sort of like, I didn't write that, or you know, whatever. But it's fun to have the perspective from inside campaigns and know that as I'm seeing it on the news, what's really kind of happening with the campaign, and especially in the last week. Nobody sleeps this week. The entire campaign staff is sort of about as caffeinated as you can get. I can tell you from past experience, especially at a presidential level. And so we love to bring, that's one of the examples, we love to bring communication to you and in a real practical way. So everybody who's on faculty, and you'll hear this from Becky in design and Kent from journalism, we do this in PR as well. But let me share my screen, and I can give you a little bit of an overview of some of the things that we do in our area. One of the things that's most important, I think, about this slide, though, is the 3 words in terms of what we're about. And that is, we want you to learn how to create, I always call it a 3-legged stool. We want you to have visual skills, we want you to have written skills, and we want you to have oral skills. And in the way we talk about it for the department is create, connect, and change. We want you to learn how to create those messages, whatever the format is. We want you to be able to connect with lots of people, because the best way communication works is when people engage with it. And we hope that you will be change agents. I always think about that when Isaiah gets called, the last thing, he says is, here I am, send me. He goes out to be a change agent. And we want you to be change agents in whatever that form is and whatever profession you choose to go into. We offer various degrees. Each of these is Bachelor of Arts, except for the brand new master's program. But the Bachelor's in Communication Management, the Bachelor's in Journalism or Convergent Media, which Professor Walls will talk about in a moment, a Bachelor's in Public Relations, and a Bachelor's degree in Digital Media, which is actually a degree completion program that occurs at a couple of our regional campuses, but we still oversee that, as well as the Master's degree in Strategic Communication, which just started this year, and we're so excited to bring a wonderful young professional on board who's heading up that degree. And one of the things to look toward, even though it's not fully completed yet, is one of the things we're working on is a partnership with the master's degree where you could do 3 years of undergraduate and then 1 year of the graduate program in strategic communication. So you'd have an undergrad in PR and an MA in strategic communication. And so that's still getting, fingers crossed, we're still getting that approved. So it's going through the system as we speak. Some of the things that, and I've been here 4 years, and when I came in, I was giving up being a vice president at a university. And one of the things that attracted me to this program is all of the programs are very 21st century. Most of our courses, if you look in the catalog, are identified for what you're going to need in the future. Small class sizes, we keep our class sizes at a small level so that we can highly engage with students. And I know devoted faculty is on here twice, but I'll say we have devoted faculty, and we're so devoted, it's important to put it on here twice. No, and what we mean by devoted faculty is our faculty are very highly engaged, both personally as well as professionally in the classroom. We like to engage with our students in small groups outside. Our engagement with students is at a deeper level than traditionally. You're in LA, which is an absolutely great area for internships. And one of the highlights of coming into our program is the connections that we have. He probably won't tell you necessarily, but Professor Walls is coming to us with a lot of practical experience in sports industry and that background. And in fact, a couple of our adjuncts are currently with places like ESPN and that kind of thing. Devoted to their practice as well as their connection with the students are the faculty. The internships, the networking opportunities, getting out into the community, bringing those professionals into the classroom. We've been able to do that even more with the virtual, even though that's not ideal in this whole remote environment. But one of the things that it's allowed us to do is connect people from across the country who we normally wouldn't. One of the PR classes was able to bring in a woman who's from a very well-known firm in New York City last week and be able to talk with the students about those internships just because we were kind of forced to. International study abroad, even though that's limited right now, we constantly are looking at trips. Our PR department director has done trips to Europe and to the big PR and communication markets of London and Madrid, Barcelona, Amsterdam, a number of others. And then faith integration. We make no apologies about the fact that we are a Christian liberal arts institution. And so you'll see us and hopefully be a part of the program that really says, what does it mean to be a Christian communicator in this culture? And to be able to figure out how do you do that? What does it look like? And it's a challenge we constantly go through. Trust me, it's a journey. And we just happen to be journeying with you on those things. Communication management is one of the 3 degrees within the communication department. And it is really what we call a next level. People will say, what do you do with a communication degree? Well, a lot of it has to do with what you're going to do once you're in a position. So a lot of times we will prepare you to get in the door, but then also move up to the next level. This is why our leadership courses and organizational courses and all of those things are important. And we have folks in all kinds of different areas. I had a LinkedIn request from a former student And I had lost track of her, of where she had gone after graduation. And she reconnected on LinkedIn, and I found out she's in Germany, in charge of flight attendants for all of European United Airlines. And I thought, wow, I'd lost track of her for 4 years, and boom, she shows up in this leadership position. And we began to chat about what she's using those things for. A lot of the things that you see in that second paragraph have to do with team building. How do you lead in those contexts? How do you work in organizational cultures? How do you help people function in dysfunctional organizations, which like all of us have been a part of and will be. It's the nature of organizations. Because the only time you think about it, the only time you think about communication is when it goes wrong. And so you get to help fix it. And that's one of the things that's part of that. Who are the students? They're people who like interacting and leading other people, though they are not all extroverts, I will tell you that. They want to explore sort of the science behind why people do what they do socially, and why do certain words matter. And in this era of so much social unrest, why are there certain words that seem to be weaponized or powerful? And why how are other words more calming? And how do we lead the discussion in the culture that says, when all of these people are out of control, what can we bring to the table to help the conflict resolution and the management of that? We want to see people develop other people. So you begin to create leaders around you, people who are skilled at working in diverse cultures. We have one of the most diverse group of students across races and socioeconomic and all kinds of different areas, which are great because that leads us to what's it going to look like if you go work in this environment. And we can learn from one another to do that. Building relationships and teams, helping organizations work through things that are mutually beneficial. A lot of people become managers, org leaders. There's some communication training and development that occurs in organizations. My wife, who is an accountant by trade and a CFO by job right now, one of the things she fell in love with as she went through her career was beginning to train and develop other people. And so you become a teacher within the organization. And so customer relations, strategic communication, how do you handle social media? And not just using social media, but how do you strategically use social media? We have ministry leaders, human resource officers, counselors, entrepreneurs, a number of people that are in corporate and event planning, both at universities and at larger corporations. I get to see a former student out in Colorado at the end of this week who is working with the city of Breckenridge and doing very well in terms of beginning to manage their communication during the pandemic and other things. So I'm interested to find out how she's applying all of the teaching as well. I'm going to turn this over to Professor Walls for just a second, because he really needs to talk about the journalism part of this program since it's his baby.
Chris, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Hey, I'm so excited to be here tonight. Thanks for making the time. We really appreciate it. I just want to give you just kind of a quick 60-second pitch on kind of my background, and to give you a little context of how I ended up at APU, and then ultimately what we've tried to build here from a journalism perspective. I always tell people I never thought in my life I would be in higher education at the age that I'm at. I expected to retire and then teach collegiately at some point. I'm so thankful for God's path that it was different than that. And I can tell you, about 5 years ago, I was approached by Azusa Pacific University to step into a role to ultimately run the journalism program here at APU. And I'm so grateful for that life shift. At the time, I was coming from 15 to 20 plus years in the media industry in some capacity. My journey started with the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Phoenix Suns on the content creation side. That led to a job covering college football for Fox Sports nationally. That led me to a position at a company called Versus, which is now NBC Sports. And then from there, I started my own company that's worked with a wide range of networks, including Comedy Central, BBC Worldwide, and brands like Facebook and Nike. And also worked in morning radio for Go Country 105 and Yahoo Sports Radio and Angels Radio AM 830, doing 5 hours of radio in the mornings, right up until my time at APU. And that's when I met my now wife, and I was dating her and realized I had no time. And I had committed 6 days a week, about 18-hour work days, and I needed to slow down a bit while also accelerating in my new role. And so I stepped into the position at APU, and I'm so grateful for that. And we've seen a lot of change, not only in the world of journalism and storytelling, but in the world that we have here at APU. And so there's kind of three pillars that we approach journalism with at APU. Is number one, we needed to modernize their facilities from a journalism perspective. Number two, we needed to modernize the curriculum. And number three, we had to make sure the branding was modernized as well. And so we took that first year to kind of assess and go out and raise some money. And I'm so grateful. We built a multi-million-dollar newsroom as of 2 years ago. It opened officially. We are so grateful for that space. It's state of the art. It has a dedicated podcast and live radio studio, a dedicated multifunctional studio, a sound stage, an entire control room that operates just like a live broadcast truck. We have 21 workstations in that space with state of the art equipment. We have camera equipment that we never imagined we would be able to have when I first arrived at APU. And we've equipped students in a way that they can be extremely successful in this industry. The second thing was we wanted to rebrand kind of who we were as a group. And we have a website now. It's called zoonews.com. If you take a look at it, you see it right there. When I first got to APU, the website, the student media website, got about 300 visitors a month, which was nice, but it wasn't what we were looking for. Our website now, on average, gets anywhere from 50 to 70,000 unique visitors a month because the students are creating that high level of content. For a school of roughly anywhere from 5 to 10,000 students, the fact that we're getting 50 to 70,000 unique visitors a month just speaks to the work that our journalism students are creating on a daily basis. And we're so thankful for that. We've gotten national attention as well. We've been linked in articles from the LA Times, the Huffington Post, to NBC Sports. It's been really, really amazing to watch our students thrive in this type of environment on a daily basis. And then finally is our curriculum. We wanted to make sure that our curriculum was reflecting exactly what journalists were experiencing on a daily basis. And we've made that change and that shift over the last 5 years to make sure we're equipping students for exactly what they need when they step outside of APU's environment. And the cool thing about it too, that I always tell students is I wish journalism, and we're working on this right now, had journalism and content creation, because there's countless amounts of students that have come through our program as journalism majors and have gone on to live in other worlds, whether it's the nonprofit space, the PR space, the YouTube space, the marketing space, because you obtain a skill set that is extremely compelling to potential employers. And if I list off just alum in the last 4 years, it is truly remarkable what some of our alumni have done. I'll start with Faith Vandervoort. She just left her position. She's 3 years removed from APU. She just left her position as the deputy press secretary for Vice President Mike Pence to then take over the deputy executive director position for the Department of the Interior. I've got Katie Richcreek, who just left ESPN, 4 years removed from APU, to be the lead editor at Action Network. I've got students at almost every affiliate, some interns, some active employees at the moment in the greater Los Angeles area, KCBS, KABC, KCAL, you name it. We have, like Professor Leland said, Dr. Leland said, we have Professor Raber, who's the fan engagement editor at ESPN currently teaching in our program. We have students, we have the engagement editor at Politico. She's 5 years removed from APU. We've got students at the Vegas, Palm Springs affiliates. We have a former alum who's at the Washington Examiner as a lead writer there. So it's not us, it's our students. And they have gone through this program and then left APU and gone on to do such incredible things. And we're so grateful just to watch their journey and how they accelerate their careers so quickly because of the skill set they've been able to really accelerate while they were at APU. So that's kind of the world of journalism. You see it right there, some of the career paths outside of maybe the ones that I mentioned, but we've created an environment and fostered a culture where we truly believe students can thrive in this space. If you say, I have students come into our program who say, I want to create content, whether that's writing, that's creating podcasts, that's creating videos. I want to live in the world of journalism. I want to be a documentary filmmaker. I want to go into PR. I want to go into marketing. The great thing about this major is the skill set that you obtain and that you accelerate is something that can go far beyond just the world of journalism. So that's my quick conversation around the journalism major here at APU. And I know Chris is going to take it into the conversation around PR right after this.
I just get excited about what you guys are doing, Kent. Every time you talk about it, I'm like, I am so glad this is part of the department, because it is so much a part of our world. And you talk about a place where we need sort of change agents.
Sure.
I love the fact that we've got some in some pretty great spots. Related in some way to the content and some of the skills that journalists have is the public relations area. And one of the things that we start with is the PR major is relatively new. It's only 3-4 years old, but it's been developed already in a great way to attract students who want to fall into these areas. So public relations, different than marketing. Marketing is about product usually, or people. You can market those kinds of things, but when you do PR, you're dealing with a little bit larger environment. So you're dealing with brands, and you're dealing with, like it says here, reputation management, media relations specialists, people who work in the media, with the media industry. And so it's helpful to have some of the same, we have some crossover courses that allow people to do this. And so, trying to find, that link. And Dr. Medell, who is in charge of that program, couldn't be with us tonight, but talks, I know, often about the practical application of what PR can do. And it can do it in so many ways. Everybody needs brands these days. And everybody, you talk about influencers, those kinds of things. Those are all, possibilities. And then the students we're seeing come in are good at networking. They're social media savvy, which is most of you, as my children who are in college show me things. Can I just recommend that you help your parents, right? We like to be media savvy, or at least think we are ourselves. People who are creative. We had a PR campaign by our PR agency on campus last year that dealt with a nonprofit called Blue Jeans Go Green, and it's a group that recycles old jeans into usable products. And our students created the environment, got it out to the students and beyond into the community, and we're able to collect those and see a project from very beginning, inception, to the very end of it. And in that case, it worked out to be financially lucrative, because the nonprofit hired us to do the larger campaign, and we got some money back for the department and for some of the students who were involved in the leadership of that. So I'll sort of stop there, because I'm used to teaching in 3-hour blocks, so I could go a little bit longer, but I won't do that. I'll stop sharing, and we'll turn it over to the other department represented here with Rebecca and the design department, which you'll see has a lot of relationship to the kinds of things that all of our departments are doing. So Becky?
All right. So my name's Becky Rowe. I I was introduced, I've been at APU for a while. Prior to coming to teach at APU, I was a designer and worked mostly in the nonprofit sector, working for public broadcasting. I worked for World Vision. I worked for a number of major universities as their primary designer. So I've had that kind of background and experience. One of our other full-time faculty had a different kind of career. He focused mostly working as a designer in different aspects that happen at Disney. You might have heard of Disney. And then our newest design professor is someone who's experienced developing user experience design, which is one of the top areas that people are looking for designers to go into. So I'm gonna, we offer a really broad-based program that covers some foundations types of classes where you learn the nitty-gritty of what it takes to become a successful designer. And then we offer a range of intermediate and advanced level design courses that are meant to help you develop your portfolio. A portfolio is ultimately how you get a job. Portfolios now, of course, are presented in the context of websites or oftentimes Instagram. So we cover a lot of bases. We're not an art school. One of the advantages of going to a place like APU is that you get a really broad-based education. And what has been being discovered across Southern California especially, but in other parts of the world too, actually, well, United States, is that the APU students are good at talking about their work. They're good at talking with clients. And oftentimes this turns out it's a really unique skill that we are preparing our students with. And it's part of the advantage of going to a place like APU, which is a liberal arts education, compared to some students who go to art center types of schools where you focus so much on design work that you're not as well rounded. So a lot of our graduates are landing jobs at top design firms. We have a recent grad working up at Facebook. We have graduates working for Nike. A lot of our design students or graduates end up setting up their own design firms and have become quite successful at that. We have 2 recent graduates who are teaming together and are creating movies. We have a couple other graduates who team together and are making a name for themselves in the world of graphic comics and doing illustrations for that kind of thing. So kind of enough words. I'm going to share a couple slides that go through, what design kind of looks like. One thing that I've discovered over the years working at APUs, a lot of students come and declare design as their major, and they're not exactly sure what it is. And so I like to start this presentation by showing you what design is. Because basically design is everywhere. So basically design is a sign that you see walking down a hallway. Design is the packaging that you pick up at 7-Eleven. Design is somebody's work bag that you see sitting in the hallway. Design is your favorite candy bar wrapper. Design is the bag that is where you go to do your grocery shopping. Design is a keyboard of whatever favorite laptop you prefer or iPad. All of those things are designed, and that somebody had to make decisions about what it is that you're looking at. And so the bottom line is, I worked with someone one time who he used to joke about how designers had a button on their computer that was the design button. We don't have a design button. We do have process. And what process is, it starts with research. Designers do a lot of research. They research who their client is, what the competition is. They do round after round of ideas. It's a very iterative kind of process in that you never get it right the first time. And so designers have to deal, a lot of people use the word failure. That's such a harsh kind of word. I always like to say designers deal with a lot of making mistakes or dealing with they were wrong. And it's not so much that they're wrong, it's just that you keep having to work on something over a period of time in order to come to a solution that makes everybody happy at that particular point in time. And I like to talk about the process covers a real range of thought processes. This is how my brain works. I am not a straight line thinker. I'm like how we work on the internet, where you start one place and then you suddenly you're over here and you don't know how you got there. And I discovered though that this is how the designers at Apple Computer works. And so I thought, okay, that's cool. I could get a job at Apple. On the other hand, other people do work in a more straight line kind of thinking where you start, they use the word here, exploration. I was using the word research. Research leads to visual exploration. What is this thing gonna look like? You start generating ideas in the computer using different software programs. You take it somewhere, it gets evaluated, it goes back into the process. This is where you learn to deal with making mistakes and not getting it right the first time. And so that can go on for a while, depending on any given deadline. And ultimately you come up with the final communication device. And so we like to call design as visual storytelling, in that you always have a goal in mind, and the visual concepts that you develop are what ultimately tells the story about your client and or the product that they're trying to promote. And I also like to say this, that some people call design as problem solving, and you do solve a problem, but you have never solved the problem completely, because inevitably someone will come back to you in 5 years and they'll say, okay, well, this is great for 5 years ago, but now we've observed these new things. We want to update our logo. We want to update our marketing campaign. We want to update how we address the content that we have on our website. And so it isn't, so once again, you have another problem that is very related to how you solved that problem 5 years ago. And this is a designer who's talked some about this. And so he likes to say that designers develop responses to a problem at some given point in time. So finally, enough words. I like to show what some of our students have done in classes. Up at the top, you'll see the students' series of thumbnail sketches where they are given the assignment and they explore in their sketchbook different ideas. You'll see there's words as well as little scribbles. And so designers think both ways. They think in terms of images as well as words. And then on the rest of the slide are some various iterations of a logo design for this idea of creating some work for a place called the Arts Collective. Every semester in our upper division classes, but we also do branding in lower division classes as well. We have a client. In some cases, it's an actual real client, and the people from that firm come to our classroom and interact with the students while they're setting up a solution to a rebrand. And so you'll come up with the logo mark, the logo type, a palette of colors and preferred typefaces. You can apply it to an airplane so that the client can see what it's going to look like. And here's the variety of versions that a logo might be presented in. This was a project that a student did where she created an app for a travel website that she named Explorable, and came up with a direction that reflects some of her research and developed what a website might look like, along with a series of pages and how this app might work. So she developed all the icons and put together a series of slides that would represent how this app would work. Again, this was rebranding a current company. This was a student's take on how Peet's Coffee might be rebranded, coffee and tea. This was another student's take on how thrifty ice cream could be brought to a more contemporary kind of look. So here, a few more words. The design studies major, again, is everywhere. From the Nike logo to the menu you read at In-N-Out. Design makes connections where other people might not see them. It always involves asking the what if questions that not only motivate the designer's creativity, but challenges the client themselves to think beyond what their current brand might look like. And one of the important things about becoming a designer is that you will always be learning. What I like to always tell my students this, and this might be shocking to any of you listening to this, but when I became a designer, we didn't have these cool little laptop thingies with fancy software on them. When I first became, really dating myself, but we used our hands. And so it was a very different process that we went through. And so I always like to tell students right now, we're all really used to working on our laptops. There'll come a time, I'm pretty sure, although I can't really see the future for sure, but there'll come a time in my students' careers where they're not going to be using their laptop nearly as much as we currently are. And so we're always learning, which is part of the fun of becoming a designer. It's not a boring career. It's also fun in addition to that. So you're going to work on creative solutions to different kinds of challenges. You'll look at how people might engage better with a website, software, application, which is called the whole user experience end of design. And then you might do a lot of research that can be applied in a graduate school setting. Right now we have a couple of students who are working on MFA degrees at some of the top art and creative universities around the country. I'm currently working with another student who has graduated a year or two ago, and she's decided she wants to go back to school to get her MFA. And MFA just provides some additional opportunities to engage with learning the process of coming up with creative visual approaches to communication challenges. Basically, that's how design and the world of communication interact. We focus on visual communication, and the other majors in the Department of Communication really look at the three things that were presented here today. All right, Thomas, I think it's back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Rowe, and a huge thank you to Doc Leland and to Professor Walls for your presentations as well. You guys want to go ahead and turn your cameras back on? We'll go ahead and transition to our Q&A time and answer some questions. And so we are seeing some questions come in. Great job to everyone who has already submitted those. Again, if you do have those, please go ahead and submit those to us via our question and answer box. And I'm sure any one of our panelists would be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. All right, well, our first question, Professor Walls, I think I'm going to direct this one to you first, and then Dr. Rowe, Dr. Leland, feel free to chime in afterwards. But the question is, how early do students usually have opportunities to obtain internships within your programs?
Yeah, so I'm a big advocate for, we have kind of two schools of thought on this. The first is we have a dedicated internship class that's a 400 level course that you take your junior or senior year for credit, et cetera. But I'm a big advocate for taking internships ahead of internships. I was the classic college student who had 3 or 4 internships before I actually got credit for it. So I was interning my freshman and sophomore year the second I got to college and had that chance. So I always encourage students, you know, second semester of freshman year, start applying and just see if something lands. And if you get an internship that summer at a local, you know, TV network or something, and you have an opportunity to get paid and do what you love, go for it. And that's amazing. And then maybe your junior year will get you credit for it because it's a 400 level course. And so that's kind of my thought process with internships. This industry is based on relationships and building those relationships and fostering those relationships. And 10 years from now, the boss who hired you for the internship is the boss who's going to hire you as the executive producer of the show that they're then working on at that point. So the more you can build those relationships early, the better. And that's what we're here for too, is to kind of point you in the right direction. Dr. Leland mentioned it. You're in the second largest media market in the country. You're 15 to 30 miles away from some of the largest decision makers in all of media in the world. You have an opportunity that most college students in this space don't have. No offense to the student that goes to journalism school in Montana, but they are not that close to the decision makers like they are here in Los Angeles. And so I think really leaning into that, and then leaning into the fact that we're close to the ocean and we've got great weather. that makes it even that much more appealing from a program perspective. So embrace it.
Yeah, in design, all design students do an internship, at least one. And like Professor Walls was saying, we encourage students to do an internship as soon as possible. Oftentimes, the more opportunities that you have to apply your design skills outside of the classroom, people who are doing the hiring after you graduate are really impressed with that. The graduate I mentioned who's working for Facebook, he partly got his job working at Facebook because he first did an internship there. We had another student who did an internship with the fan club of the Lakers, and after he graduated, he also was hired for a while with the Lakers. By the way, go Dodgers! Sorry, go Lakers too. Anyway, so yes, internships. We have design students do internships actually on campus at APU. Some people look down on those, but I like to tell students and the other faculty in the design department that any experience you have where you're working with a real client, asking you to do things, and it's not in a classroom setting, is a good experience. We do like to get students to off-campus internships as soon as possible, though. Mute.
Oh, Doc, I think we have you on mute again.
There we go. Okay. I think when I typed in the answer, I was giving the academic side of what Professor Walls talked about, because the internship course, which is required actually across the university, and one of the things a student didn't recognize, I was advising yesterday, was that your internship is a required general education requirement, as well as counting for the major. So you get to kind of double dip, which is nice. But also that's why we really consider that, it's at a 400 level, and we want you to, that's when it counts for credit. But I agree entirely with both Becky and Kent to say we encourage it sort of as soon as you're able and the opportunities fit well, and you don't have to do it necessarily for credit, or you can split the credit. It's 3 units that are required, but you might have an internship that is worth the hours up to 1 credit, and then you can split the other 2 in some other time. So there is a way to get around that, and we want to be as creative as possible. We have people in each department who their sole purpose is to work on walking you through the process. So I always tell advisees, seek them out early. Let's start connecting you to people, now. Because we get some, what did we learn, Kent, the other day about who got hired? We learned one of our grads, all of a sudden somebody just dropped into a conversation about,
Reed Conant, he was a
Yeah.
junior last year heading into his senior year. Reed's been part of my staff on Zoom Media for a while now, kind of running the entire podcast side of things. And he just casually brought up that this summer NESN, which is Northeastern Sports Network, hired him for an entire apprenticeship all summer. And NESN is basically the lead affiliate in Boston, which is the feeder to all the major networks in New York. It's like being in the top 5 markets in the country. And he just casually got an apprenticeship for the entire summer as part of that program. And it was all done remotely, of course, because of COVID, and he knocked it out of the park. And he's built some relationships on the East Coast that he never would have had had he not stepped into that. And so we were really excited for him.
Those are cool stories. They pop up. True, you guys as students, you kind of go, oh yeah, by the way, I did. And we're like, did what? That's awesome.
He's also, Reed also is interning / a production assistant at KCBS locally. So on Sundays, he is in the studio pulling all the highlights from all the NFL games. That's his job. It sounds like a fun job.
I was going to say, that's a cool job.
Awesome. Thank you guys for those answers. I think we have a good follow-up question that we just got hit with actually. So this is coming from a transfer student. She's asking, will we be able to squeeze a couple internships for communication management? And I suppose even for any of these majors that we have here today within 2 years, and are the internships paid?
The answer is yes to both, but not always. So let me explain. The internship, the ideal window for internships that we find, unless there's something local that's here in the LA area that you can accomplish. Some of them, if you're not from the LA area, and say for example, you go home to wherever home is, you're home to Texas or Arizona or something for the summer, then a summer internship is sort of an ideal time for at least one of them. So yeah, you could, it depends on what your other course needs are. That's one where more than likely in the communication management area, you're going to work with me as the advisor to talk about what transfers and what doesn't, and how we can try to fit it in. Because that's great, but I don't want to overwork you. But I think if things fell right, yeah, you could do more than one. And I would say that about 50%, I've been trying to get this number nailed down, but about 50% of the internships that people had last year, I don't have data for this year, but last year, were paid in some way, shape, or form. And when I say that, we had a student who, because of, I think the state they were doing it in, couldn't receive direct compensation, so they couldn't get a paycheck, but they got free housing and they got free food from the organization they were working with. So they were, they got to get the experience and internship, and they didn't get paid cash, but they got compensated in a different way. And actually, they sent me a picture of the place they stayed. I think it was in Michigan, and they were staying in this older couple's home. And I need you to think like homes of the rich and famous kind of thing, because this thing was palatial. And they were like, "Hey, look where I'm staying." I was like, "Okay, you scored, right? I'm going to come visit and vacation in Michigan and, stay with you." But and the household had a cook, so the food, I'm like, a little different, but it's a good idea. So, and Becky, I don't know what you find in design in terms of paid.
I'd say the majority of design internships are paid, but some are not. And oftentimes those are when a student ends up doing some work with a nonprofit organization, but that actually provides an opportunity for the student to also get some service credit hours. Since they're not getting paid, they can get credit for the APU requirements for service credits. So it kind of works out nicely in that regard.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you once again for those answers, everyone. I think, Professor Walls, I'm going to direct this next question to you. And I think similar to the first question, Doc, Leland, and Dr. Rowe, feel free to chime in for your programs afterwards. But the question is it possible to double major in journalism and do something else, so a second major, and still graduate in 4 years?
Yeah, absolutely it is. The great thing about the journalism major is it's 48 units to complete the actual major. And a lot of those classes actually can double dip sometimes in other majors, whether it's PR or other majors. So there's an opportunity there for students. I've seen a lot of students come through our program and double major in programs that live in our department. So they're comm and journalism, or they're PR and journalism. I've also seen a lot of students do it with design or other maybe majors that complement what they're looking to do in the world of journalism. So if they want to be a business reporter, reporting for the Wall Street Journal, then maybe it makes sense to double major in business management and journalism. Or if they want to go into maybe the health sector, then double majoring in something related to health and journalism. And so there's a lot of opportunities there. And we've structured it from a credit standpoint so that students are able to do that, which is, I think, really beneficial to any incoming student who's thinking about double majoring. Now, any double major requires more work in general. So I just need to throw that out there as a caveat, that if you're double majoring, you're going to be doing more work in general just because you're getting a double major. But the cool thing about our major is that it's been designed to kind of allow that flexibility, because a lot of your majors push more the 60 unit number from a credit perspective. And so we're only at 48. So that's a full semester that you could dedicate to, your other classes for your other major.
Yeah, so for the design major, the new program that I'm setting up to get approved, likewise, totals at about 49 units required, which same thing allows more flexibility for doing a double major, or in some cases picking up a couple of minors. Yeah, it totally depends on the direction that you're interested in moving towards. There's a lot of design majors who do a marketing minor because design and marketing oftentimes work together. The primary majors that are currently graphic design minors do come from the Department of Communications, because again, there's some crossover in kind of how our skills are applied. So even though they're not necessarily doing a full-on major, they're getting a lot of experience and building a portfolio, which in the context of design is what you really need, is examples of your work.
Well, I think let me piggyback on what you just said, because one of the things that a lot of incoming students aren't aware of is the concept of a minor. Because majors are what you pick to sort of concentrate on, but almost every department has a minor, which is sort of a partnership degree along with what you're doing. So rather than even double majoring, you can major minor in combination. And in communication, we constantly say the kinds of things that Kent said in terms of what's, you're going to do communication, that's your skill set. You're going to do design, that's your skill set, but you're going to do it in some environment. So what does maybe getting the minor or the other major in that environment? He mentioned health, business, political science, whatever it might be that begins to give you sort of that's the context in which you're going to do it.
Awesome. Yeah. In fact, Doc, I'm really glad you mentioned that. So as Doc so kindly mentioned at the beginning of this call, I actually graduated with a communication studies degree. So I myself, as a student, I minored in two things. I had my communication studies degree, which is actually, where is it? Right over there, if you see it on the wall. I also minored in psychology and our honors college. And so just like Doc was saying, you do have a lot of room with any of these programs, really, to explore other things and really kind of understand in what context, what nature, or what world you really want to be applying these skills that you are learning in each of these different departments. Speaking of you, Doc, I think this next question is going to be best suited for you. It's this. So is public relations the same as international relations? And if not, what are the differences?
Public relations can occur in an international relations context, but typically the international relations or IR degree or courses are found in political science departments. Though they can be related, they're typically going to be set up differently. One of the reasons I know this is I have four sons. The oldest son, is in international relations and in the Army. And so his degrees actually came out of a political science department. Though what he's finding himself doing is a lot of PR skill development. So he's doing it in international settings, but having to communicate and negotiate with those kinds of skills in the international context. So that would be my recommendation. And that's actually one of those possibilities of a major minor or double major connection.
Awesome. Thank you, Doc. This next question, Dr. Rowe, I'm going to direct to you. So how would a student be able to determine whether to study art and go fully into the arts, or to opt in for something like design studies? What are the general differences between those two programs?
The easy answer is that design, well, there's two easy answers. One is that design your relationship with a client is critical to the creative application of any given ideas. Whereas in the fine arts, there isn't necessarily a client involved, so the creative generation comes more so from within yourself. Now, there's certainly a crossover between doing any kind of visual art, whether it's using the fine arts or what some people used to call the creative arts of design. So we see some students right now, there's at least a couple of students who are taking any number of our fine arts types of classes, but they are at the same time honing their design skills, which the other part of the easy answer is with design, you can more readily get a job, so to speak. It's a little bit more difficult to get a job with a degree in painting, we'll say. But again, to piggyback onto this whole idea of we live in the Los Angeles area, and in normal times, there's a place called Hollywood, and they employ a lot of people who have fine art skills, from painting for backdrops and scenery situations to 3D sculptural types of explorations for making movies and television shows. So in the Los Angeles area, a lot of the fine art graduates do get jobs doing that kind of thing, which sometimes isn't quite as satisfactory to their inner artist, and so they save time on the weekends where they explore that. And we also have, there's a fair number of design students and art students who, same thing, they either do a major or a minor in one of those things, and they piggyback with the other major to get the experience, and they have a more fully developed portfolio that way that they work with to get jobs.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Rowe, for that answer. Professor Walls, this next question is going to be for you. And so the question is, how does the journalism department keep up to date with modern media? And how do you keep updating that program as times continue to change?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a daily conversation sometimes. And for us, I think it's really about this faculty that we surround ourselves with within the program. I mentioned Professor Raber, who's the audience engagement editor in the ESPN newsroom in downtown Los Angeles. Of course, it's remote at the moment. Myself, I still operate actually a creative agency outside of my responsibilities at APU. And one of my lead clients includes Facebook. So I'm in that world of content creation almost on a daily basis. And so making sure that what is actually being reflected on the content side of things is being reflected in our curriculum and our modern workspace. And we were talking about this ahead of this meeting, in that the way my newsroom operates under Zoom Media is exactly how the Facebook team operates from a communication flow perspective, and how they communicate on certain verticals on the G Drive, et cetera. And so there's confirmation there when we're still actively part of the industry, and we are literally looking at both worlds, saying our newsroom is reflective of exactly what's happening outside of the space. And Professor Raber says the same thing. We are operating like a small ESPN newsroom. We just don't have the amount of employees that ESPN has, but our process that's in place. And that's where the checks and balances come in. Even Professor Raber said to me yesterday, hey, I want to do a deep dive on our social media. I think we're doing a good job, but I think we can do an even better job. And I would like to bring that up on class on next Monday, and have my class for the entire time assess what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, and then we're going to change some things immediately. Are you okay with that? And I said, absolutely. Like, that's the stuff that makes me come alive, is because in real time, these students are doing exactly what Jonathan's doing on the daily for ESPN. So that's really where, sometimes higher education can get into a place, I'm not speaking negatively of other institutions, but they can get into a place where, the class looks the same for a very long time. And that's not our mantra, and that's not how we operate. And we want to make sure that our class is adapting to the current environment. Even right now, the last 2 weeks I've been doing my lectures for my sports PR class. I've just been making podcasts just to change it up for them, because they've been watching so many videos. I said, we're doing podcasts for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to record podcasts, and that's going to be the lecture. And I'm doing this week, our topic, I called an audible last minute. It's sports and politics, because we're a week away from the election. And that's a big picture conversation. And I'm not trying to drive people into a conversation about who to vote for. I'm trying to drive people into a high level conversation of what is the role of athletes, teams, and leagues in the world of politics. Like, what's that look like? And historically, what does it look like? And what should it actually look like now? And I want to engage in that conversation, because it makes sense to talk about it this week. And so that's what we're doing for the next 7 days. Is we're engaging in real time in what's transpiring. You're watching the NBA, you're watching Major League Baseball, you're watching these athletes use their platform. Let's talk about it. And let's look at both sides. There are people in the sports media industry that live very much on the right, and some that live very much on the left. And we want to hear both sides. We want to grapple with both sides. And then as a group, we want to talk about it and engage in a respectful and grace-filled way, but also in a way that is challenging and educational. So yeah, that's kind of our approach. That was probably a long answer for what you were asking for.
But Thomas, I have a quick little answer, I think, too. Technology is always changing. And so the 4 years that you're at a university, you learn those capabilities. But once you go out into the real world, it's going to keep changing. And so that's what I was saying before. You're always going to be learning the new stuff. I was just talking with a recent grad. At her first job, they asked her if she could do something. And she just said yes, she could, even though she had never done it before. And so it's kind of a can-do attitude, knowing that there's always going to be something new. We're always going to be needing to keep up to date wherever it is we land with our career.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Rowe, Doc Leland, and Professor Walls. It is 7 o'clock, and so we are going to go ahead and close out our event tonight. But again, thank you for your time. Thank you for speaking with us tonight. And for everyone that's out there in the audience, thank you for joining us. We know that for many of you, you're probably sitting in a lot of Zoom calls every day as it is. So the fact that you are here with us tonight does mean a lot. If you do have any other questions about any of these things that we talked about or pertaining to any of these departments, I encourage you to go ahead and get in touch with your admissions counselor if you know who they are, or if not, to go ahead and give us a call here at the university, and we'd be happy to reconnect you with any of our panelists or anyone in the department that can answer those questions. Yes, Emily actually just dropped an email address in the chat. So if you see ugadmissions@apu.edu, that would be a good address to send your inquiries to. So go ahead and send an email there, and we'd be happy to redirect you. Well, without further ado, that concludes our events for the night. Once again, thank you everyone for coming out, and we hope to hear from you soon. Have a great night and take care.